This Saturday night, AEW will broadcast the second edition of All Out from Daly's Place Amphitheater in Jacksonville, Florida. In what's shaping up to be one of the biggest shows of the year, we have 3 World Championship titles on the line, a 21-man casino battle royale, as well as some wildly entertaining matchups across the board. There's a lot to cover today. We have about 45 minutes or so, so let's dispense with the opening remarks, and Tony's ready to go. So if we're all ready to go, let's go right away to the lines. And Robin, if you'd open the line to Kenny McIntosh from Inside the Ropes, so we'll get started.
Hey, Tony, how's it going?
Very well, Kenny. Great to hear from you.
Thank you. Thanks for taking the time. I really appreciate it. We're all very excited All Out this Saturday. I wanted to ask you, maybe it's a controversial question, I hope not, but Chris Jericho had said, I think it was last weekend, that he didn't really think that the FTW belt meant that much in AEW so far. And I just kind of wanted to get your comments. And obviously there's kind of 3 male single titles and what we can maybe expect coming up with the FTW title to give it more.
The FTW title will be treated totally differently than the other titles. I'm really glad you asked that, Kenny. I'm working on a pilot, and it's a different kind of a project than the way you've seen wrestling titles defended traditionally. And it's very different from, obviously, how we use the World Heavyweight title and the TNT title. So the AEW World title and the TNT title, I think, have been treated as very, very important titles, and I really, really feel great about both those belts and their champions. And the FTW, title and Brian Cage, I feel good about too, but we haven't totally established it yet. And to be honest, our plans for the FTW title, there's a lot in store, and I'm excited about it. So I'm glad you asked. Thanks, Kenny.
All right, thanks, Kenny. Next up, I'm going to call on Bill Pritchard from WrestleZone. Bill, you there?
Hey, can you hear me?
We can.
Oh, hey. Hey, Tony, how are you?
I'm well, Bill. Thanks, man. It's great to hear from you.
So I wanted to get your opinion on the response to the tooth and nail match so far. I know some people online were less than thrilled that it's going to be on the buy-in. So do you have any comment just to reassure fans or make them realize that this is an opportunity for them and for more people to see the all-out pay-per-view and it's not really a demotion?
That's absolutely true. I've always felt that way. And we put, from the first pay-per-view we did, Double or Nothing, we put some of our biggest stars, including Hangman and MJF, on the buy-in. And the idea of it, the reason it's called the buy-in is because we try and put exciting stuff on this first, hour of the show so that people will pay to see the whole show. I love wrestling fans, and I've often said that wrestling is my favorite economy, and it is a strange, inelastic economy. It is the only place in the world where you'll have people complaining about getting something for free that they don't have to pay $50 for, and I think that's great because, like, the prestige of the quarterly pay-per-views, it shows how important I think we made getting on the main card. But at the same time, this is a great, important match for us. I think you'll see a lot more of Britt and Big Swole, and I'm excited about this. This isn't going to be a traditional wrestling match. The pay-per-view is going to be very, very wrestling heavy and not as story heavy. I'm sure we'll talk more on this call about it, but philosophically, like last night, the second hour was more story-based stuff to get you ready for the pay-per-view. Similar to what we did for Revolution, we had a very wrestling-heavy first hour in Kansas City with Kenny Omega and Pac in the Iron Man match. And the second hour was more story stuff, and Chris Jericho and Jon Moxley did the weigh-in. Last night was some great wrestling in the first hour, and some good wrestling in the second hour, too. I thought particularly Thunder Rosa and Serena Deeb were excellent. But with Britt and Swole, there's going to be a ton of great wrestling on this card. Their match is going to be cinematic, frankly, and it's going to be great. We're going to have a live crowd there, and we thought for the live crowd, given the kind of match they're going to have in this situation, this isn't the Britt and Swole can and will have great wrestling matches. I think this will be a little bit different, but it's also going to be a lot of fun, and it's going to be free for everybody to check out. And I think all the great wrestling everybody's going to get on the pay-per-view will be worth the money. But it's a great question. I don't think it affects the status of the match. It's more about the tone of the match, frankly, and also the fact that it's good placement. It's a good advertisement for broad fans to AEW. We think it's going to be a great match, and it's going to be going out to a big audience.
All right, thanks, Bill. Next up, I'd like to call on Connor Casey from Comic Book. Connor, are you there?
Connor, you have to unmute your line.
Hey, Connor.
Hey, are we good?
Yeah, man.
Awesome. Hey, Tony, thank you for doing this. Really appreciate it.
Of course, yeah.
In the past few weeks, we have seen NWA power footage on Dynamite. We've heard Billy Corgan's voice, and obviously we've seen Thunder Rosa more than a few times, and she's got this big match on Saturday. What is the working relationship between AEW and NWA as it stands right now?
It's the working relationship between us is the extent of the good personal relationship between Billy Corgan and me. I've had a good relationship with Billy for years, long before I got into the wrestling business. Frankly, I'm good friends with Chris Nowinski. I really believe in Chris's work, and I think, you know, the Concussion Legacy Foundation does great work. Chris has come in at my request and spoken to all of the AEW talent, and we have a good relationship with the Concussion Legacy Foundation, and Chris is my good friend. And he introduced me to Billy years ago, and I went to one of Billy's concerts. He's a very nice guy, and I have a lot of respect for Billy as a musician. The NWA's got great history. They aren't really operating right now. I think we're very, very different companies in a very different place. And I think the NWA, it sounds like they're going to get back to running, and I wish Billy the best with the stuff he's doing. And I thought this would be a good opportunity for them and for us, because Thunder Rosa is great, and I thought she would be a great challenger for Shida. So it's one of those situations where I thought it would make sense for both sides, which is why I proposed it, and he agreed, and that's why we're doing it.
Thanks,
But
Connor.
it's a good question, Connor. I'm sorry, Jim. I didn't mean to. So that's it, Connor. And I've asked Billy about this. I'm not sure what the future would hold for it, but obviously, if Thunder Rosa wins the title, there could be a lot more. And Thunder Rosa and Shida is going to be one of the great matches on the card. I think Thunder Rosa, her first match on Dynamite was a hit last night, and I'm really excited for the match. And so Billy and I have got a good relationship. If Thunder Rosa wins the title, you could see obviously a lot more stuff between us, but I don't have any plans to use anybody else from the NWA. Although some of our star wrestlers have been there, you know, with Eddie Kingston and Ricky Starks and Colt Cabana. So it's a good question. But besides Thunder Rosa, we're not really talking about using anybody else from there. But again, Thunder Rosa by the weekend could be our champion, and it's quite possible. So I would stay tuned on that.
All right, thanks, Tony, and thanks, Connor. We invited everyone to submit questions also online, and we have a number of them. Tony, I'd like to read one now to you from Darren Paltrowitz, a freelancer. And his question is: unlike other wrestling companies, AEW has managed to keep people surprised, where most of the surprise appearances have been kept secret, even when pre-taped. Does a lot of work go into that? Or is it that people don't get hired unless they really know or really show trustworthiness?
I think it's a bit of both. We work really hard at it. We keep a small circle. We're a small company. It's a family business, a small company, and we're a startup. And we've grown so quickly worldwide. But frankly, even though we're the second biggest wrestling company in the world, we're not the biggest machine. We're not the biggest. There's not so many people that just spoil a surprise, because I think the more people that are in on it, the more likely it is. And we really benefit that we got a lot of great, trustworthy people in our front office. And I keep things very close to the vest, frankly. But the people I do talk to, I really trust. And the people we bring in have been really trustworthy. So I think it's been a really positive thing for us. And we've tried to keep these surprises a surprise, and frankly, we have a lot more surprises ahead for you in the coming weeks. And I'm excited about things that are coming. So I really respect the job our team have done, and the rare times things have come out, I don't think they were from people in our core organization. It's funny, Chris, I think at one point Jericho alluded to somebody he thought mentioned something off a tape show, and I think he was right. And I don't think that was a person that works here. But generally, when we've tried to keep surprises, we've kept them in the family, and we have a great family here.
Fantastic. Thanks for that, Darren. We're going to open the lines back open and go to Nick Hausman from Wrestling Inc. Nick, are you with us?
I am here.
Hey, Nick.
Hi, Tony. Thank you so much for taking the time today.
Sure, Nick. How's the weather in Chicago? Sorry for asking that and wasting everyone's time. I'll add that time back on the end like a football match.
You know, Tony, I went down to North Pond yesterday, and it was a beautiful 82 degrees. I watched the turtles and the ducks, and it was beautiful. You should have been there, buddy. It was wonderful.
I know it's been a while. I haven't been home up there in a long time since Revolution.
Come on back. We'll go to a hair salon and a bar. It'll be wonderful.
What's up, Nick?
So, Tony, my question is pretty straightforward. I know you love when you get asked about free agents. It's like your favorite thing. But there's a big one out there right now. Brock Lesnar. Have you talked to Brock? Do you have interest in Brock? What do you say to all the speculation that he could possibly find his way into AEW?
I can't comment on that at this time, Nick. But I've enjoyed Brock's work for many years. He's a great fighter and a great wrestler. I don't think people talk enough about what a great worker Brock Lesnar is, and is one of the great working big men I've ever seen, one of the great athletes in the history of the wrestling business, and I have so much respect for him. But I couldn't comment on that, Nick, but I appreciate you asking.
Thanks, Nick. Another question came in online, Tony, for you from John Corrigan from the Wrestling Estate. With all the highs and lows of AEW's tenure so far, what has been the biggest lesson you've learned as the head of a pro wrestling company?
It's a great question. Last night was a really good example, honestly. There's times where the red light goes on and it's 7:59, and at 8 o'clock, the show clicks on, and you should have realized something sooner, but literally it doesn't occur to you until you're there in the chair. And that was me last night. And there's times where it's going to be like this. And frankly, like, I know last night there was a lot of great wrestling in the first hour, and I put a lot of responsibility on Thunder Rosa and Serena to have the strong wrestling match in the second hour. And I thought they nailed it, and they were put in a showcase position in the semifinal, and they nailed it. And, but I kind of knew we were putting a lot on them, and thankfully they hit a home run for us. But in the first hour, like I said, in Kansas City in the first hour last night, in the go-home shows, my philosophy has been put a lot of wrestling there, put a lot of story stuff in the second half. Now, in Kansas City, some of the story stuff you got in the second half, the weigh-in with Jericho and Moxley, with, you know, this big crowd in Kansas City, they loved it. You've got Orange Cassidy's coming out and challenging Pac in the show, with making that match. There's a lot of fun stuff. Last night, frankly, I understood that, like, if people want to see a lot of wrestling in the show, 48 weeks a year, that's all I think about is wrestling, wrestling, wrestling. 4 times a year when we have these huge, huge pay-per-view cards, they that week become the priority. The go-home shows, I treat them differently. The highs and lows and the lessons I've learned, every week I learn a new lesson. The pandemic has been lesson after lesson after lesson. I try to learn things and not do them again. And if I make a mistake twice, then I'm definitely trying not to make it 3 times. The highs and lows, it's really the same thing. It's just like learning and trying to put together good shows. I have a feeling that this weekend is going to be one of the great highs. I look back at Revolution as probably a high point for us. And then I just think like that day was a perfect day for me. I had met with a lot of people. I had been with Orange Cassidy and Pac talking, you know, separately and very late, talking about things that I wanted to see tomorrow. And I'd been with Jon Moxley and Chris Jericho very, very late, separately, talking about things that were going to happen with them. And I ended up getting very little sleep. We played early in the morning. Fulham won. When I say we've, I mean Fulham. Fulham had this match. I didn't get a lot of sleep, and then went over straight to the arena, and we had Revolution. And to me, it's the best thing we've ever done. It was just the perfect day. I would call it the ultimate high, but it was also the culmination of learning a lot of lessons. Since then, the wrestling business has changed dramatically. Last year, we were the #1 company in attendance per show in the world of wrestling. And this year, it's not really about trying to put fans into arenas. The philosophy of the business has changed completely in the last 6 months. And I feel like we've tried to roll with the punches. This weekend is going to be one of the highs. This weekend, I can't tell you how excited I am for Saturday. I held back in the second hour last night too much, maybe, because I wanted you to really anticipate the wrestling on this show, because the main card on Saturday, bell to bell, is going to be the best wrestling you've seen since the pandemic. Furthermore, I hate that it's come to this. I hate that this is what we have to do. But I've used this analogy privately and publicly, and I'm sorry to give such a long-winded answer to highs and lows. There's a lot of answers to highs and lows and a lot of things I can talk about. And I'll say this, like, the pandemic has been the best example of this. There have been such highs and lows in this pandemic, trying to do great things. To come back and do Double or Nothing and do that, I thought Double or Nothing was like the bastion of ingenuity. To be able to sit back and it's like, okay, with what we have, how can we do a great pay-per-view? I thought, and I'm sorry, I'll just be honest, we were both operating during the pandemic. I tested everybody coming in. This might be the pull-out quote of the press conference, but I'm going to say it. I thought Double or Nothing kicked the crap out of WrestleMania. It was a much better pay-per-view. We were both operating under difficult circumstances. I think ours, we were fortunate. It was a little bit later in the pandemic, and we had implemented testing, and we're doing testing at that time. But when we did Double or Nothing, we were still the only ones doing testing. So it wasn't like we had a good testing plan at that point, okay? And what we came out with and did at that point, to set up a bubble and do that pay-per-view, I was so proud of it. We've come a long way since Double or Nothing. If you were if you want to see a show with wrestling fans in a packed arena, I can't give that to you right now. But what I can give you, and I've talked a lot about in the last week or two, has been a drive-in movie theater. I know everybody wants to go back to the movies and go see, me, at least I do. I used to go to the movies all the time since I was a kid, and it's one of my releases. And I haven't obviously been able to go to the cinema in a really long time. But the drive-in movie is a way to go with your friends and family and feel safe and do the same thing you used to do before, which is go see a new movie together and in a kind of a captive experience where everyone's not going to be in their phones and paying attention to the movie on the big screen. And I can't offer you the cinema, but I can offer you the drive-in movie. And that's how I feel about what we're doing with the live events. And it's one of the great highs for me. And to see the live crowd, Chris Jericho described it as one of the great highs of his 30-year storybook career last week, having that crowd back. We're going to go. We've got a lot of unallocated space we didn't use, but we didn't want to stretch the security personnel. The people, the staff at Daly's Place and the AEW team have done such an amazing job on this. And we're going to go a little bit closer to 15% for All Out. And again, I compare it to the drive-in movie theater. I think this is over 99% safer than the experience of packing people into an arena. I think this is the only way to do live event wrestling shows right now is outdoor, socially distanced, seating pods, fans in protective masks, and having people around, not to be a jerk about it, but just to remind people, hey, please don't get out of your pod and go hang out with the people in the other pods, and please keep your mask on when you're not sipping your drink or eating your pretzel, or So we've had that, and this weekend will be, I believe, one of the all-time highs in the company. When you look at the card, which I think now we can hopefully spend more time talking about, and rather than me giving you this long-winded answer, I'm really excited for it. I think Saturday All Out, it's going to be a lot different than All Out last year, but I wouldn't have it any other way for the situation we're in, the people I'm with. Please, if you've ever liked an AEW show, check out All Out this weekend, because I think it will be some of our strongest work. Thanks for putting up with that. Sorry, guys.
We're all good. Let's go back to the live lines. John Alba from Spectrum Sports. John, are you there?
Yes, I am. Tony, thank you for taking the call. I appreciate the time. Piggybacking off of what you just said about the COVID protocols, at what point did you guys decide that you were going to let fans in, and what was the process like in determining what the health protocols would look like?
We came up with this idea. I wanted to do anything I could to start looking at a safe way. Eventually, when we've got, first and foremost was a testing plan. We shut the company down in April until we could come up with a way to make it safe to do shows for the wrestlers again. So we did that. And my number one priority, A and B, are wrestler health and safety and fan health and safety. So we came in, and it's like, first, to do a wrestling show, we need to make sure we can do this and keep the wrestlers and the crew and staff safe. So we implemented a testing plan, and we returned at the beginning of May with a live show, and have been doing this with, testing, and have had great results, which really shows that the people have been doing the right things in social distancing, because we've had, I think, people have come in, and we've had very, very few positive cases, and we do rigorous testing. Once we got that implemented, I started to look at how we could utilize our outdoor space to safely have some kind of live event experience. And we'd been putting tested people, fans at ringside, but they weren't really fans. They were wrestlers and crew and staff, but it added a sense of normalcy. You've probably heard me say it by now that I got this idea from watching The Tonight Show, and they had the crew in the studio. And going back during the first week of the pandemic, looking at how shows were handling it, that was the most creative thing I'd seen. And then how can I kind of take that and replicate it? How can we do this? Well, Daly's Place has 3 levels and is a really big outdoor space. Eventually, we had the staff kind of spaced out in the bowl, and I started to wonder about the top 2 bowls. There's not a bad seat in the house as far as the stuff we've allocated. I mean, there's great views, and it's my first thought was, is it for egress, for getting people into the building, temperature testing, all the things you need to do, the things I never thought of that our marketing staff put together, like the pickup of the when people have ordered items online for shop AEW, they're able to pick them up, which I never even thought of, how we'd get through that, or the concession lines, and the creative thought and ingenuity that our team put into it. We've spent the last several months working on it, and then we did kind of a soft open. We invited some staff and some sponsors and local friends to come and sit up there, and did temperature tests, all the stuff we're doing now for them is kind of a soft open. We slowly started to hire more security personnel. Then a week before we went live with fans, we had done, again, kind of a soft open. We had brought in some security. And I think you saw some of those videos, maybe some of you guys had posted online of what we were doing before we actually started selling tickets, just to kind of get ready to train the security personnel, to remind people to stay in their pods and keep their masks on, or not too many people going into the bathrooms at once. And it's been a process that, it felt slow because everyone was anxious to have the fans back, but I think it was right to be cautious. And now we got a process that has worked really well, we think, and hopefully for All Out, it'll pay off with this great crowd of, 700 people, 750 people. However it comes out exactly, it's going to be the hottest, biggest crowd for wrestling in a long time. And the most important thing is it'll be a safe crowd. Thanks for asking about it.
All right. Thanks, John. I'd like to call on Jim Barcelone from the Miami Herald.
Hey, Jim.
Okay, all right, good. Oh, yeah, now you can hear me. Great. Hey, thank you so much. I'm curious because you mentioned Thunder Rosa and Serena Deeb. I'm wondering about Serena Deeb, and and your women's division in general. And might we be seeing more Serena on the show? And just you had a great women's tag team cup tournament that was just amazing. And what are your thoughts of the division these days, and also about Serena? And thank you.
Oh, sure. Thank you. Well, we've been bringing in more talent. Some of our best wrestlers in the division, including our first champion, Rio, have been trapped outside the U.S. because of the pandemic. Yuka Sakazaki was also one of our top wrestlers. And so not having them, we've been looking to bring in more talent. And Thunder Rosa challenging Shida for the championship, and now Thunder Rosa being positioned here with a chance to be a top wrestler and maybe even the face of our women's division. And then you've got Serena Deeb, who many of us are familiar with from her work in the Straight Edge Society for WWE. And I hadn't seen Serena work in a long time. I heard she had been looking really good in the ring, and she came in, and I thought she was really impressive, and she got, frankly, rave reviews, and I'd love to have Serena back. And again, Thunder Rosa versus Shida, we're very excited about on Saturday at All Out, and that's why we've been looking to expand and bring more talent in. The Women's Tag Team Cup, we brought in more talent. Tay Conti and Anna Jay were a good team, and now the Dark Order has been recruiting Tay Conti, and we think that could be interesting to see where that goes. So, yeah, because of the pandemic, we thought we had some very good women wrestlers that were a really important part of the division. And with them not being here, hopefully they'll be back soon. And that's why we've looked to bring in some new talent who I think have really done well, especially in recent weeks.
Thanks for joining us, Jim. Next up is Amy.
Oh, by the way, just Jim, if I can, for both Jims, just real quick, Jim, if it's okay. You know, again, I am really proud of them. I'm proud of Thunder Rosa and Serena because we put them in a big position in the semi to be the strongest wrestling match in the second hour, and they did it, and they hit a home run, where the other matches are more, and, you know, we're setting up stories for All Out, because All Out, like I said, even, you know, 4 weeks a year, these quarterly pay-per-views will really, frankly, you know, beat the audience over the head over this, especially in the second hour with All Out. But it's for a reason, because I want you to know that this Saturday we're going to do something really, really special. I'm so excited about it. But I'm really proud of Thunder Rosa and Serena because they hit a home run in the second hour. So thanks for asking about that, because I thought they were great.
Okay. Amy, you may have heard me call on you. Amy and Emily, are you there?
Yes. Hi. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Hi. So this question is for Tony. What's it like being a wrestling fan who's now in charge of one of the biggest wrestling companies in the world? Are you still a fan? Has it changed your relationship with wrestling at all as you've worked through the last year and a half?
Yes, it's changed my relationship with wrestling immensely. It's one of my favorite things in the world. I've learned so much on the job, and that's what I was talking about last night. You sit down in the chair and you realize things sometimes, that you'd pace things differently or do things differently. I've been through some of the most hectic situations of my life, but it's one of my favorite things, and I am so happy to be in it. I have surreal moments all the time. Like anytime I do a podcast or anything with Tony Schiavone, you know, I look over and I think it's ridiculous that, you know, Tony Schiavone, who I've been listening to my whole life, that I work this closely with, you know, whether it's producing him on the show or on this podcast or in post-production, Tony does all this great work. It makes me so happy when I think back to Tony Schiavone telling the story. You know, I've listened to his podcast before there was AEW, before I knew I was starting AEW, and he would talk about how, you know, he had regrets in the wrestling business, and one of his great regrets was leaving the WWF. And he had this job that was a pretty good job, and he left it to go back to WCW. He thought he made a mistake, and there were parts of the job he really liked. He really liked working at Coliseum Video. He liked being a producer, and he liked doing the announcing, but I think the most organized he'd ever seen the operation in terms of production, in terms of producing the announcers and what they were looking for, was probably the WWF, and I don't think they had as much structure in WCW. I hope and strive to be somewhere in between. where we're not overproducing the announcers, but I do feel like I've got a really good working beat with all the announcers. And I bring Tony up specifically because throughout the year, he's been with us. And even through the darkest days of the pandemic, through the shutdown, when we ran a bunch of tape shows in April and got it all together in a marathon, Tony was such a workhorse in post-production. And so I bring him up not exclusively. I have these experiences all the time as I sit in Gorilla, with Dean Malenko and Jerry Lynn working through the matches, but I also don't really have any time to think about it because it's so hectic and crazy. But every day, I share, an office and a meeting space with, Chris Jericho or Matt Hardy. It's pretty surreal. And to think that Chris Jericho and Matt Hardy are going to be in very, very prominent matches on All Out makes me really smile. But I also can't really be biased or think of it that way. And so, yeah, it's crazy. I'm really, really excited for this weekend, and things like All Out and shows like All Out are what get me going. I'm also really excited for this whole week because I know that the Dynamite after All Out is going to be really, really good. I can't tell you guys everything about it yet because you're going to have to see the pay-per-view and see what happens on the pay-per-view. And there'll be some fun surprises, but this whole next week, I'm really, really excited about. And as a fan and also as what I do professionally, that this is one of my great loves, my great love. Thanks for asking.
Tony, I'm going to ask a question on behalf of Alex McCarthy from Talk Sport, who wrote in. Alex's question is, how is picking up new talent like FTR affected the long-term booking you've often spoken about? Have you enjoyed the challenge of pivoting?
I have. It's been crazy.